The Strait of Hormuz is going to reopen. In fact, it looks like there's already quite a lot of shipping moving through it, Ross. So that is the immense relief that the world will face. And Donald Trump is now rationalising this, saying that basically we were facing the alternative was a worldwide depression. Could have thought about that first, but that's the one thing for the moment we can say. But of course, there's so many questions and conditions on all of these issues. Apparently it's only fee-free for 60 days, and I think if there's any problems at all, we know that Iran will close it down again.
What are the most obvious risks to the deal?
Well, the most obvious risks revolve around Lebanon, which is mentioned 3 times in the opening clause. And essentially, the Memorandum of Understanding says that the US and Iran and their allies will stop fighting in Lebanon. Now it means Hezbollah on the Iranian side, and of course Israel on the American side. Now there's no indications at all that that's going to happen. Israel, if anything, is doubling down. You're hearing comments from ministers in the Netanyahu government saying we run our own policy, we're not lackeys of the US, all this sort of stuff. Hezbollah is being able to be re-energised by Iran, and unless the Israeli forces withdrew from the border, would continue to be attacking Israel.
And what's the strait then likely to look like in 60 days' time?
What's the strait's going to look like, or what's
the overall state?
Look, I think I think that it's really dubious. I mean, the sort of people starting to analyse this deal are just finding it gobsmacking that it's just got, you could drive a truck through so many aspects of it. American Republican senators, one of them was saying, unless you were homeschooled by a day drinker, you wouldn't trust anything that Iran said. There are a lot of problems with it, including that backlash from the US Senate and Congress. So I think that we can't really presume anything other than that there'll be a bounce back in the markets, which Donald Trump will obviously be completely focused on. But I think things like the $300 billion fund, which apparently nobody's going to be sort of contributing to. Trump suggesting the Gulf states will. Saudi Arabia saying no, that's not going to happen. And there are questions for Australia too, Ros, because the lifting of sanctions, which has been declared in this, is apparently not just for US sanctions. Donald Trump is saying it would be for UN sanctions, which of course is something that the UN has to vote on, but Australia has sanctions on Iran, so that's going to be a decision down the track, which is all dependent on what's going on. Now, the nicest thing you could say, I think, is that given how little trust there is between the two sides, the positive is that they'll just have to quietly build on these things.
So has much changed because of the war in terms of global power and position?
It's extraordinary, really, because this deal says so little but says so much. Because essentially Iran has, if this comes to fruition, has gained so much financial support. It's got control over its assets again. It's rewritten all its relationships in the region, and the US is completely humiliated. It's one of the big moments in global history so far this century, I'd say.